Welcome to the first episode of the currently untitled podcast. My name is Jordan, and I am joined to my left here,
Ben,
and to my right,
Tyler.
Good job, Tyler. So, for this first episode, we decided to look into the nostalgia of the Lego video games because of the recent announcement of a new Skywalker Saga Lego game.
Mm-hmm. It's supposed to come out sometime in 2020. There's no official release date, but after I watched the trailer for it, I got really interested in what kind of made up the Lego games and how they kind of, at least for me, grabbed my attention as a child, and I have really fond memories of them.
Yeah, I played 5 or 6 of them, maybe. I'll remember most of them at some point. But
yeah, I remember because growing up, like Lego, like just in general, was the huge thing in our household, and like Star Wars was the other two big things. Like both of them just kind of went hand in hand with each other. So when those games came out, like my entire family was all over them. Especially that first one that came out. I think it was like 2000. I want to say 4 or 5. It came out right before Revenge of the Sith, and I remember like it was a huge deal. Like we played it all the time. So
yeah, so I played. Let's see, that's probably the first one I played because I remember playing the prequel trilogy Lego games with my little brother, and then I think he also had the second one, Lego Star Wars 2, but the one that I know that I played the most was the Complete Saga because I'm one achievement away from having all the achievements in that game.
I remember the biggest thing about that game in particular was if you did the True Jedi and you get all like the gold bricks and stuff like that, they gave you that bonus room, which was like it was like a mini Lego city, but when you destroyed the buildings, then they would turn into like pieces for like Star Wars ships, and so you could just like do like more crazy shit around there, and then you could play as like some characters that you couldn't play until you beat the game and stuff like that. So like that was something that like me and my sister, we like really pushed to do that. Like we were so like obsessed with trying to get True Jedi in every single one of those, which that basically just amounted to like collecting all the coins and stuff like that, make sure you had all the money. There are these things called mini kits, which at the time I didn't realize what those did, but like looking back, we still try to collect all of those. Like that was always so much fun. We spent so many hours playing those. Do that.
Yeah. I definitely have memories of playing the first 2 Lego Star Wars games. And I played those with my dad, and I kind of played them a little bit later when I was a little bit older. But I was really young, and I don't remember a lot of it, but I also remember, like Ben said, collecting mini kits and trying to get True Jedi every time, mainly just because my dad's a fucking completionist. And so am I. But I always really enjoyed the games, and I just thought it was really cool.
You know something that I always thought was weird, even when I was a little kid, though, is that like they never talked. Like especially in that first one, like I never understood why they didn't do that, because it's not like other like it wasn't like they couldn't do it.
See, that never bothered me. I preferred them not talking. When they started changing it to where they had clips from the movies in there. I think the Lord of the Rings one was the first one. I never played that one, but I saw gameplay of it, and hearing them have the lines from the movies, but then having weird gags around the lines, I didn't like that at all.
I agree with that, because they would do like a super serious moment from like I remember when I think it was the first time like when Isildur has to throw the ring into the fire, like they're doing that, but he's doing like some stupid gag on screen, like he's like throwing it up in his hand, or like it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, and I thought the comedic scenes previously were a lot funnier because they were being pantomime. So like, and at that point when those came out, I was like almost teenager for me. So like
this is the first Lego Star Wars game, right?
Yes, the first Star Wars games, and I was a teenager at the time, and I knew every line of every movie. So like watching what was happening on screen, I knew what was happening because I'd seen it so many times. So I didn't need to hear it. I was already hearing it in my head. But whenever they do their little sketchy stuff that was funny, like I could appreciate it because I knew it was happening. But like when it moved into the speaking territory, that got kind of weird because they were just ripping lines from the movie, and then eventually they started actually recording voice acting for the games, and that was
a lot
better, but it was still weird because I'm still not used to them talking. And
it was, I don't know, I just always thought it was odd one. Like, I understand it now. Like, looking back, I'm like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. But, like, I just was like, especially because they would do, like, like, murmurs and stuff like that. But the other thing that would, like, I always remember, like, to this day was the stupid screams that they all had whenever they would die. But, like, even to this day, like, I remember, like, a year ago, not a year ago, like, my senior year of high school, all of my friends, we, like, pirated all the different screams. So, like, I had the Anakin Skywalker scream, somebody else had the Yoda scream, somebody had the Chewbacca, and we would set them as, like, our text tones. And then they would go off in class and stuff like that. Because they were just, like, it was just something about them. They were just so ridiculous. And then I just remember, like, you would just be spending hours playing as these characters, and you would just hear them all the time, because you died all the time in those games. So those things worked out. So it was just, I don't know. It was, like, insane.
Going on to the Lego characters talking and stuff, I think it was Lego DC Superheroes or something like that, where they recorded legitimate voice lines for it. And I know you can still buy the game online and in person, but I know with the Lord of the Rings game, there was a lot of legal issues with it after the licensing ran out, and that's why you can't buy physical copies of it. And I don't even think you can buy it online unless it's a used physical copy. Because the rights are owned by the movie company and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, the game that had them switch over to having the voice acting was actually the first Lego Batman, because that one didn't have any voices. And a big complaint was that people didn't know what was happening in the game, because unlike previous games, all the, like, the Star Wars, Indiana Jones, all of those followed.
You knew what the story was.
Movies and and so you knew everything that was happening. But this was original, like, Batman stories. There was, like, 3 different campaigns, and each sets of villains had different plans on what they were going to do to take over Gotham. And the only way you could figure it out is through pantomime, and they'd, like, have, like, maps on the wall or whatever it was to detail their plan. And people couldn't figure out what it was, which is dumb. It's like, if there's a bank, it's probably stealing money. If there's a ray gun, it's probably shooting something with a ray gun. It's probably an ice gun, because that's how that works. But, you know, so, like, that never bothered me. Actually, I liked it a lot more. But then after that, they were like, people, I don't know what it's doing, so, okay, I guess we'll have voice acting now, and it'd be terrible, and that's my opinion on that.
I definitely think that it does better with, like, original stories, because I remember Lego Marvel Superheroes came out in, like, 2012, and I remember that one was, like, its own original story. It was kind of loosely based on, like, the movie stuff, because it was, like, almost right after the first Avengers movie came, or the first or the second one. But, like, that one had its own original story, but every single person had, like, voice actors and stuff like that, but it looked a lot better, because, like, you weren't expecting anything, so it didn't, like, I felt like with the Lord of the Rings one, like, you kept trying to compete with, like, and then, like you said, with those, like, silly gags and stuff like that, but you kept trying to compete in your head, like, what it was showing you versus what it actually was. And so, like, there was a little bit of a disconnect there, your brain trying to do the two things. But if it's just, like, original story voice acting, it was a lot easier.
I mean, like, kind of going back on the thing where with the, like, first Lego Batman game, where you didn't really know what was going on. I mean, you could figure it out, but Ben and I recently played the Lego Pirates of the Caribbean game, which is just a giant hot mess. Because if you've never seen the movies, you would have no idea what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
Because all of the gags are incredibly, like, over the top, which is kind of a standard for Lego games, but at the same time, it deviated from the story so bad, and they skipped over big parts of the movie, which is a really big complaint.
That, and, like, there was, like, I remember there was one part in particular where there was, like, I think it was during the first movie, quote unquote, and it was, like, there was, like, 5 minutes of a cutscene. There was no talk, or there was voice acting in that one, but it was, like, they had to, like push through all of this just to get to the next area that they wanted you to play, and it just felt like they picked really weird areas to make playable, which I think, going back to the first Star Wars game, like, or the Star Wars movies in particular, like, they really lent themselves well to that type of setup they were going for, because what they would do is they would just take you through the movies, and I think they split each movie up into 5 or 6 levels, and then, like, I remember the first one you did, like, that, it was, like, Dexter's Diner was the hub, and, like, it was all designed so well. You would just go into a separate room, this is all the first episode, all the second episode, third episode, and all stuff like that, and then, but it just felt like it felt very well structured. Like, the movies were really well about doing that, and, like, it, like, made sense as to what you were playing versus what was a cutscene and stuff like that. Like, I felt like the Star Wars movies was a really good starting point for them to get into the games and stuff like that.
Well, the reason I think for that is Star Wars was always about set pieces,
Yeah.
And especially the original trilogy, like, it has had decades of video games, and so those decades of video games have set a precedence for what levels you're going to see in a game. Like, ever since Nintendo, the NES, like, there's always going to be a Hoth one, there's always, like, a, you know,
like,
depending on...
any big space battle or, like, ground battles, like, that's going to be, like...
Yeah.
You know you're going to get a trench run, you know you're going to get, trying to, like, stop the Empire from, like, destroying you on a Hoth. Like, you know, like, that's going to happen, so...
And there weren't as many prequel games at that time, so, like, but it follows... All the movies follow the same formula, so it's going to be a lot easier to hit those set pieces. And then Indiana Jones is very much the same way. Those movies are about continually to move forward, so it's always like going from one temple to the next. You know, Raiders of the Lost Ark. It goes from the first temple with the little golden statue, and you get chased by the boulder.
Yeah.
And you got to get through the forest so that you can get to the plain. So, like, it's always moving you forward. You always have someplace to go. But I never played the Pirates Lego games, but those movies don't necessarily have that same, like, formula
They
where
really
it's
don't.
moving you forward. And, you know, I think that I could plan out probably what the first one would be. Like, I haven't seen the second one or the third one in a really long time, but a lot of those locations that they go to are just very either singular times that they go there once and that's it, so there's not a point like having a whole thing.
That, and they spend a lot of time on their ships because it's a pirate movie,
right?
And that's and like that's what I got annoyed with is like there were so many levels that were exactly the same, where it would like take you through like the levels of the ship, and then you would have to go to the bottom to do something, and then you would have to like do all these. I'm just like, this. What is the point of this? Like, this doesn't like it doesn't serve
at least 3 or 4 of those.
Yeah, like it was like, and there was like at least 2 of those levels on every single movie, and I'm just like, what is the like? There's no like fun to this. Like, it's just like it's the same thing.
So does that game cover both like all 3 of the movies?
It covers all 4.
Oh, it does.
It goes.
Stranger
It goes
Tides too.
It goes up to Stranger
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Fucking movie.
Yeah, and they luckily they stopped after the 5th one, but or the 5th one hadn't come out yet when that game came out. But like it's.
Well, they're not gonna hopefully make another one.
No, they
I
won't.
hope not.
No, especially after that movie. But yeah, I think what you're saying, like especially with like Lucas, and like he was definitely like really big on set pieces, and so that's just why they did that. And then he was also just a very like structural storyteller. He's like, we're gonna have an action piece, we're gonna have dialogue, action, like.
And it's always moving forward. Like once they go through Mos Eisley, you know they're done with Mos Eisley. They move on to the Death Star, and then from the Death Star it moves to Yavin 4, and then from Yavin 4 it's the space battle. So it's always moving in a direction, and it's not staying in one place too long. That might be some of the critiques on like episode 6 with being on Endor. It feels like you're on Endor half the time.
Yeah,
And you go back to Dagobah in that movie for a short time, and I can't remember. It's been so long since I played the game. I doubt there's a Dagobah level for episode 6 because there's no point.
Yeah, no, there was
It's
like
not
they didn't even
piece.
show it. They didn't even show it. Like there was no point to that.
I think there was like a little cutscene because it has to show Yoda disappear.
Yeah, it shows
But it's
Yoda
just
disappears and it shows Ben showing up. But like because there's no dialogue, it doesn't like that. The whole point of that scene is to like say goodbye to Yoda and then for Luke to like confirm that Leia's his sister.
And that's when he shows a little picture of Anakin and Padme holding 2 babies. He's got a little picture.
Unless that's in the OG like cut. I haven't seen the original cut, but that's not in the newer cuts.
Oh.
Oh, you're talking about Lego. I was thinking of
about the movie.
I'm
Oh my God,
sorry.
we're talking about
I'm
Lego
sorry.
games
I was
here.
so
I was
confused.
like,
Oh.
yeah, dude, don't you
Gosh,
know?
bro.
In
Yeah.
episode 6, when Alec Guinness is holding a Polaroid of a movie that hasn't come out yet.
Back in my day, it was
Sorry.
All right.
Well, that didn't.
Sir, they have hollow tables.
No, dude, Polaroids.
Oh my gosh, no. But
I was like, why am I getting these looks? I'm pretty sure like that's the gag is that he's pointing at a picture. With this little,
you're right. You're right.
sea
That's
hand.
me. Gosh, man.
I definitely think that for each generation, at least like many generations, because Jordan is a little bit older than me and Ben are a couple months apart at least.
Yeah, almost 20 months.
So with each generation, there's probably at least 1 or 2 Lego games within the span of that. And for me, it was the first 2 Lego games that really kind of had that impact on me where I was like, oh shit, this is like, holy fuck.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't word that well. But it's definitely a point of nostalgia for me because I played it with my dad and sometimes my sister. My sister never played video games, so it was kind of a really cool experience. And video games have always been a way for me and my dad to bond, and like, even a couple of years later when the Lego Lord of the Rings game came out, him and I played that together for a while. So it's definitely a point that has kind of brought me and my family together at times.
You know what I think too? And because like growing up, like we love Lego, but like Lego sets are fucking expensive.
Yeah,
they
no
really
shit.
are. So I'm like, the Lego games were like a really great way. It's like, oh, you can't afford an X-Wing? Well, here's a Lego X-Wing. Oh, you can't afford a Lego Death Star? Well, here, you get to go run around, do all this crazy shit on it. And it was like a really nice way to just like do that, because the Lego games were like really like, because like it's not like you're just following the movie plot. Like they basically like you move down the hallway, then you're in this like kind of like its own set piece where you have to figure out these puzzles and stuff like that, and like you're like actually building things, and then like they would incorporate like really cool force powers, or like I remember like female characters could jump higher, all these other things, but like you had to figure out these puzzles. But it was like in a weird way it felt like you were still playing with Lego because of the way they incorporated like the puzzles and the challenges, and like you would have to like I remember like anytime you walk into a room, like your first instinct is to fucking smash everything there because A, you get those coins, and then B, like that's how you find the stuff you need to build with. And so that's just like, it just felt so like much like you were just playing in this giant play set, which is why it was so fun for me and my family, because like I said, like we love Legos, and so like it just like it was like of course like this is what we would be doing anyways if we didn't have a freaking Xbox. So like I just remember it was like, this is such a cool concept. Like it was like why I put so many hours, especially I remember the first one because I had the first Lego game for Xbox, and then we had it I got a Game Boy shortly after that, and they had like those crappy versions of the games where it was like all like it didn't break, like it was like the same like hallway or whatever, just move you down screens and stuff like that. It was really shitty, but it was still like so much fun to play as.
Ooh. I can't imagine playing that. I remember being in middle school, and I was in a tech ed class, and we had this Lego racing game where you got to build your own little racer car. And I don't know why that was in tech ed. All I remember about tech ed is there was a bunch of computer games that were simulators for jobs. Like there was like a surgeon simulator, and I would just cut up people's faces. It was weird, but
that kind of worries me.
Yeah, well, don't give me a scalpel. But the talking about playing games with your sister that didn't play games very much, I introduced Lego games to my first college girlfriend when I first started college. She wasn't a big gamer, and she'd come over sometimes and like watch me play games, and then she was like, I kind of want to learn how to play games, and I was like, well, I'm trying to think of something that would be easy for you to play that's not too complicated. So I was like, let's try Lego Star Wars. So like we started playing that, and she's like, oh, this is really fun. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. And she like actually could move her character around and do things, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be cool. So then we went and bought Lego Batman together, and we played all the way through Lego Batman, got all the achievements and everything. She wanted to 100% it. So then after that, we went and bought Lego Indiana Jones together, and we started playing that. And I don't think we finished it because she had never seen the movies, so she didn't really know what was happening, and she wasn't really as into it as the Batman, which was interesting because, like I said, that Batman one, you don't really know what's going on if you can't like catch the pantomime stuff. But she didn't care about that. She cared more about just playing through it, and the Indiana Jones ones just didn't catch her as much. So I don't think we played any more after that. But it was really fun finding that, and they're great couch co-op games. Yeah. Probably some of the best that are currently out there. And the second thing too is the sound effects, like the breaking stuff and collecting the studs.
It's so really fucking satisfying.
Yeah, it's definitely the same thing that everybody talks about. I never played it, but Stardew Valley, how like the sound effects for Stardew Valley are just so like that's what keeps you into the game, is like the hearing the plops and the clicks and whatever. Yeah. This is one of those games where the sound is just so appealing that you want to just keep going.
To counteract that, it was also like, I remember, because like the whole point is through each level is you're wanting to get, like for Star Wars it was always True Jedi. Yeah. And then like the other one was True Pirate for Pirates of the Caribbean. It was like that's all they would call it, was just true whatever the game was. So it was like
True Hero,
True Adventure for Lego Indiana Jones. So you had to collect all like the studs and like for your level. But if you didn't collect it, it would make you hear that like it was counting up, but then it would go like this super sad like depressing noise. And you're like, fuck, I need to replay this level now,
Yeah.
because you're just like, I hate that sound so much, and they would like keep and be like, oh no, we're replaying that level.
Even if you're not a completionist gamer, it's one of those things that's like, it drives you to come back to each level and try to complete it. Like, even one of the most fucking worst levels in a Lego game, the pod racing one from the first episode, which is like one of the worst designed ones because there's so many objects that you have to avoid, and it's so hard to, and you have to get your timing perfect.
You know what was weird about those levels? Because I was rewatching, because the level that always stuck out for me was the one in episode 3, the first like level, because it throws you right into the space battle.
Yeah.
And so basically what happens is it almost looks like an old ass like gaming technique where like the ship just kind of does this. It doesn't move forward or backward, and it kind of pushes like the.
It's a rail shooter.
Yeah, it's a rail shooter. So that's what it was, and so like you can't like and so like. Going back to the pod racing one was the same one, but it was just like you said, like there was just so much shit, and like it just, I don't know. I always thought those levels were really weird.
I think they revamped them for the Complete Saga.
Yeah, they completely redid them.
Which was really, because anything that they do on rails wasn't fun, and since then they've completely changed all of that too. Like I recently played, the most recent one I played was Force Awakens, I think like a year or so ago, because at that time I think the only current Star Wars game that was out was Battlefront that didn't have a story. It was before Battlefront 2 came out.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I need a Star Wars video game fix. So I rented Lego Force Awakens.
I heard Force Awakens, sorry, but it's like that one's like the most like up to date like graphics, play style. Like they had like that weird cover system.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, a lot has changed. I mean, they have at the first set of Star Wars, it was like Jedi have force powers, people with guns have grappling hooks, and then short people can go through holes, and robots can open doors,
and
that
females
was like
can jump high.
Yeah, and it was like that was all the powers. But since then, like there was also, I guess, and original trilogy introduced the bounty hunters that could break the silver, like or the platinum
they
blocks.
had the rocket launchers,
which eventually became the explosive characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's changed so much since then that there's like Rey had a bunch of her own capabilities because she had a pole, like, and there's different variations of Rey. So like she had one that had her staff, so she could do different moves with the staff, like she could like pole vault and go higher. Then she had the one that had the blaster pistol, so she could do different things with the blaster pistol. And then she had the one with the lightsaber, which gave her force powers. And so there's just so much more to individual characters because they actually changed them in between the different missions, because there's only one movie, so the missions are all about the movie, which I thought was a lot better than trying to cram 5 or 6 missions into one episode and just hit the major set pieces.
Yeah.
This actually allowed them to go like, okay, so this part you actually get to run around Maz's place, and this one is you're battling through the forest outside of Maz's.
Cool.
So it was a lot better than just focusing, like trying to push it all together and be like, okay, this one mission is on Endor and this one mission is on Hoth.
That's kind of nice because I was kind of worried. I've never played that game. I watched some gameplay to lead up to this, but like I just kind of worried. I was like, how much like this can't take more than like an hour to complete, because like the Lego games is still like, I watched somebody play through the entire first Lego Star Wars game in 2.5 hours. Like they didn't try to do any of the completionists or anything like that. They just kind of sped through it. But I'm just like, if you can do that for also like 3 movies, like how can one movie like sustain a full game? So that's kind of cool that they did it like that. Because the other thing too that you were gonna say, they all have like individual powers. I remember like Lego, like the first game in particular, they threw so much random ass side characters that like didn't do anything. Like they was like, oh, this guy has a gun, oh, this guy's a lightsaber, but there's nothing like unique about him. So it was like, I was like, I don't give a shit about collecting these guys. I'm like, I just either want to play as Darth Maul or Anakin Skywalker. There was no other one. Those were the only 2 that would always kind of main and stuff like that, because there was like nothing like interesting about these other characters to play as.
Yeah.
So
They've also updated their looks too, because if you go back and look at the original Lego Star Wars Darth Maul, he was just a regular blockhead with the horns painted on. And if you look at him now, the new models of Darth Mauls have a head cap.
I think along, because like they were only limited to what Lego figures looked like at the time, and that's what they looked like around the time the Force Awakens, like, or
they didn't really have any special features or anything.
Yeah, they were all, because I remember if you look like any background character in those games just had the signature Lego smiley face, 2 dots and a smile, like that was it. And but then especially the other thing too is this is a little bit of a nerd fact on my part, but basically, like Lego acquiring the Star Wars licensing was the best thing that could have happened to that company. That company almost went bankrupt until they got those licensing deals in 1995. And ever since then, Lego Star Wars is what has pushed that property forward in terms of how they make their models, how they build their big like ships and stuff like that. Basically, that line is like the defining like push for the rest of the Lego sets. So that's kind of how the games were too. So like they wanted to update the looks of these characters, so they just kind of spilled up on all their other stuff too. So it's just kind of interesting the way that one little licensing deal has really helped like that company out.
And Lego's interesting because not only do they have Star Wars, but now they also have Marvel and shit tons of other Disney stuff.
Yeah.
But on top of that, they have WB and DC Comics, and so it's like, I mean, theoretically, you can have Gandalf and Darth Vader and Iron Man and Batman all fight each other in the same
Wasn't that
universe.
what like the Lego like I've never played the Lego Dimensions game, but wasn't that kind of what that kind of deal was?
Yeah, it was basically Disney Infinity, but with Legos. But
you can mix and match all those characters and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I think that we've learned that the figurine video game model doesn't work as a platform.
The
Because
only one I ever saw that was successful was the Skylander ones. But that's just because those were actual action figures, not just people on like plates.
They weren't even action figures; they were just action.
They're just things on plates too. But I think the difference is it was directly catering to children, and that came out far before Disney Plus or the Disney Infinity did.
Mm-hmm.
And Disney Infinity, I actually like a lot of their models for a lot of their things. Like I've thought about purchasing their little figurines just as cool little figurines, but
it's a nice little cartoony style. Yeah.
The
Lego sets were actual Lego people, and like they like.
Yeah, and you could like build stuff, and if you built it in real life, you could use it in the game. I don't know, it's got some weird like coding within it.
It's just the plates.
But it's just like it doesn't. I don't know. It didn't work because nobody wants to do that. It's like they want to play. They either want to play with Legos or they want to play a Lego game. They don't want to do both.
Yeah.
I think to me the only successful one is Amiibo, and I think that's mostly just because it's Nintendo, and Nintendo is everything they do is collectible. It's if you don't get it when it's available, then you'll never get it again, and if you try to get it later on in life, it'll be
really
2
hard.
or 3 times its original price, and prices don't go down with Nintendo stuff. I mean, shit, fucking old Pokemon games are still $45, and that's insane. But talking about the Force Awakens, I thought it was pretty interesting. It was also, I believe, the first Lego game to have DLC, which it has.
Last Jedi DLC?
No, it's a bunch of random extenuated. So it's got the free one is how C-3PO got his red arm. And it's this whole story about like him and a bunch of other droids that crash on this planet, and it's just like how he gets his little red arm.
There's a comic book about that too, I think.
Yeah, and so it was tying into a story that will never be told in the movies, which it was like, hey, look at this thing, and it was like, oh, what's on with that? It's like, go look at something else. All right, great marketing strategy, assholes.
That's their entire marketing strategy. Like, if you think about it, like you could do a whole podcast dedicated to that alone.
There were some other ones. There was some Poe missions. I don't remember what they were exactly. And then there was another character. I believe it was what's his name? Mark Sydow. Was that his? No. The guy, the old man that gets murdered at the very beginning of Force Awakens. That gives Poe the
Lor Santeca.
Yeah. I think that there's a DLC that's about like him, how he got the map piece.
That's interesting. Yeah, because the movies don't say shit about that. So
I was trying to think of his real actor name. It's something Sydow. He's notable British actor. He's been in a lot of stuff, but I just thought that was interesting that it has DLC because that's never really happened before. And then instead of having the doorways that you go through that take you to the different missions, it's like there's like a landing platform, and you go to get on your ship, and then you get to choose. It's like a star map, and you choose what planet you want to go to, and some planets have multiple missions on them, so you can go and choose what you want to do at that time.
Okay, so that leads me into my question. Do you guys like prefer like the structured, like there's a hub and then you go through these levels like the older Star Wars games, or do you like the open? Because the first open world Lego game I played was Lord of the Rings. And what they did with Lord of the Rings is that they would kind of like, when you're walking to get to each level, they would kind of like shrink down like the distances between like the different, like I remember like Rivendell to where they would get to like Rohan or something like that, and like it would just be like you would have little things you can do there, and that's kind of what the open world aspect of it was. But then like you would go through this door, like there was this building, and then that's what the real level was. It was really weird, but there was that, and then like Lego Marvel Superheroes is like completely open world. Like it was like you can explore all of New York. It's also just kind of a little, I don't know, like do you have like a preference between the two?
I've never played any of the open world ones. What it sounds like in that Lord of the Rings one is that they basically just had like, after a mission there was a hub, and it was like just a bunch of different hubs that just had one doorway that moves on to the next. So it's not necessarily free roam, but it's more just the individual, like it's like a chain. It's like level hub.
Yeah.
I think actually the first sandbox Lego was, what was it, Undercover Cop or
Lego City Undercover, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the actual first one, because it's legitimately Grand Theft Auto but
with
Legos.
Yeah.
And so it's like you just drive around the city and do like, and then there'll be like a little glowing thing that you go stand on, and that's what starts the mission.
Yep, that's what Lego Marvel. By the way, I like, as much nostalgia as I have for the Lego Star Wars games, I still think one of my favorite Lego games to play was the first Lego Marvel game, because there was like almost 300 characters you could collect, but that one was like, at that point, like they got their shit together, so it was like you want all these different characters, because from when they had like 8 to 12 different variations of each character skin, because that's just kind of how Marvel is. There's so many different variations of his characters, so there was a collectible aspect to that. But then like you would need certain characters to do these certain side missions, so like you would have to, like Ant-Man wasn't like a character you got through the story. You had to go find him, do his shit, then you would get him, and then you would use him to do somebody else's shit. So there was so much side stuff to do, but it was like the map itself was actually pretty decently sized. Like I think it was like half, I might be getting this wrong, but the Marvel Spider-Man game, I think it was like half the size of that. Okay. So like it was still really good. And for the fact that it's a Lego game too, and then like you could fly around as Iron Man. I remember one thing that me and my friends ended up doing is we would do Hulk tag, because Hulk can jump and like run super, like he would run like stupid fast when he was in Hulk mode, and then he could jump really far. So we would do like, we'll give somebody 30 seconds to run in any direction, and then we chase each other as the Hulk and stuff like that. Like, there's just so much fun shit you can do in that game, and it was just like spend hours not even doing story missions. And so I think that one was like the true like perfection of that, and that's why I think it's probably one of my more favorite games like overall in the Lego series.
For me, it really, with the open world versus hub, it really has to be structured well, and it can't just be open world for open world's sake, because a lot of games will tag on like, oh, it's an open world game, just to have that title and just to draw in that kind of crowd. For example, like I played the Lego Harry Potter games, and it was technically open world because you went around the Hogwarts castle, and that's where you found your mission and then did all that shit. And it was technically a hub, but it was so big that it got really confusing to get around and find things, which is the same thing with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But the problem I have with hubs is like in the Lego Pirates of the Caribbean game, it was such a fucking shitty hub. Oh my god.
I just think that was a shitty thing to try to...
I agree. It probably wasn't.
What was the hub?
It was basically...
So port.
You have...
Tortuga?
No, it was Port Royale.
Oh.
So you had the 4 stories or whatever in the center chunk, and then the left chunk was like stuff you could kind of explore, and it was the same with right, but on the right you had your mini kits. But like they didn't really give you incentive to do anything, and like it kind of going back to like the open world versus the hub thing, collecting characters. Like if you're collecting characters through the open world, like with Lego, like the Lord of the Rings one, it was so hard to find any kind of characters.
There was no map, or like, cause like I remember, you know how in Indiana Jones, like you went to that map room or whatever, or the library, and that's where you bought the characters. You don't do that on Lord of the Rings. You have to pray that you've walked by one of them in one of the hubs, and that was how you purchased them. There was no place you could go to just to get it, and it was so stupid because it's like I have to walk back through 3 different fucking hubs to get somebody from Rivendell. So it was just...
Wait, so if you need to go back through a hub, does that mean you have to go through the entire previous levels?
Yeah. You have to, you don't have to play through them, but you have to walk through.
Yeah,
that
you have to.
area.
You don't have to play through the levels, but they do like. So okay, we forgot. So like, once you go to a hub for the first time, you can only go through it part way, and then you do the level, and then as soon as you do that level, or I think there might be 2 on some of them, then you get access to the full hub to where you can go back and forth. So that way you wouldn't have to go through the level to do it, but you would still have to walk through all the hubs.
That just sounds dumb.
It's
It
convoluted.
was a
But
shit
it's
show.
not good.
That's what it was.
You get talking about all these the different characters. Like, it makes sense in Star Wars because Star Wars was always about just a huge world building, like, you know, walking into Mos Eisley Cantina and there's just different alien races of every kind, and eventually there was some kind of extended lore about every single one of those characters. So saying, like, you know, 300 characters in the game makes sense because there's probably an action figure of one of those characters.
Yeah, I think the first Lego Star Wars game had 30 characters you could collect in total.
On top of the ones that you get throughout the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it ends up being like 150, and then I think the second one had 200 something, and then I think when they did the complete saga, it was like 300. It was, all of them combined, but... Indiana Jones, I never understood why there were so many characters because it would have so many. And also...
Do you want to play as a Lego Nazi?
You want to play as a Lego
They can't-
Wuhan, who is such a side character that he's the one who shot Indiana Jones's, like, waiter dude.
Yeah.
Like...
They can't say Nazi and stuff in that, so it just says, like, German soldier and whatnot. And so it's like...
Did they have swastikas in that game? I don't remember.
It's only been recently that
Yeah.
they've been getting more into allowing Nazi, like there was for a long time it was really anti like having swastikas in anything.
Yeah,
it's a kids game, so
I don't remember if they did or not.
I doubt it. It mostly would just have an eagle or something.
I always
I
see
think
the ones,
so, yeah.
the ones that I saw all the time were just like the red and the white circle and nothing else, nothing in it, to kind of imply what it was. But
yeah, but the comic book games make more sense too of the character collection, especially like, you know, Batman and the Marvel ones, because there are so many comic book characters. Like you'd want to have, you know, Killer Croc and Mad Hatter and Batman's like Iron Man, where he's got like 7 different suits and each one has one like
the Lego
scuba suit.
Yeah, the Lego Marvel game. I think there was like the first one. I think there was like a good like 8 or 9 just Iron Mans alone you can collect, and that's not even including like War Machines, different like stuff like that. And then also
Iron Patriot.
So the other thing too, so there's a Lego Marvel Superheroes 2. I had never beat it because it's so much more fucking confusing to play because it's a shattered dimensions type thing. And so when you would fly through New York, it would turn into different things. It was really fucking confusing. But the characters on that were even more outrageous. Like they would pull like the most like random like obscure characters and like skins and stuff like that you could, and it was just like that was what's always was so much fun with that. Especially because they would always figure out a really interesting way to translate into like a Lego piece too. Because I think that was the other problem with like the Lego Star Wars stuff, but it was also a product of the Legos at the time, is that they all looked kind of bland and flat, and like they would just have like generic faces, like hair pieces, like Lego didn't really get into printing torsos until like early 2010s, and so like it would just be kind of just like it would just look all kind of But nowadays, like, it's just so fucking crazy, all the cool shit you can get from that, and all the ways that they figure out how to make this character look like a cool figure.
Yeah. I mean, even with the Lego games, kind of going back to how you were talking about how they've kind of had many evolutions within each game, like, the vehicular stuff is really impressive now, because, I mean, if you go back to, like we were saying, with the first Lego Star Wars game, it was all on rails basically, which is like not really that fun. But with like I remember with Lego Indiana Jones, there was like the secret room where you could go in there and pilot like a fucking tank and just drive around, and you had actual control over it. And it was the same with Harry Potter and I think Lego Lord of the Rings maybe.
Lord of the Rings was weird. It was just horses.
You had a bike.
Oh yeah, they threw a bike in there because they made it easier to walk through the stupid hubs. But the other thing about Lego Indiana Jones is that one of the best scenes from The Last Crusade is the motorcycle chase. And they fucking like nailed the motorcycle chase on that game, or at least I think so, because it was like open, so it wasn't the rail thing. Like you would have to drive around, dodge things, but then you would have those little areas that you would have to stop because the gates would close and stuff like that. But you could still drive your bike around and stuff like that in it. Like it's just so much fun.
There were 2 Indiana Jones games, right?
Yeah, I never played the second one.
I never
I heard
played
the
the
second
one
one was crap because basically all they did was they just redid. So the hub was different, and then all the levels from the first game were the same, and then it was the ones from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which I personally don't have a problem with that movie.
I don't either. I think it's perfectly fine.
I think it's fine compared to if you look at I don't know, like that's a whole other side conversation. But like if you don't like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, there's no reason to get that game because like that's all it does is add that.
That's what I thought.
So
It was open world. I had a friend who had
Was it
it, and I
open
played it a couple times. It was like, as far as, I think it was open world. I might be speaking incorrectly, but
so
I
is
remember.
it is it an open world or is it just like a giant ass hub?
It's a giant ass hub.
Okay.
I probably
that's how
said
the
that.
that's how the first like Indiana Jones was too because he had to walk through the freaking college.
That was a
through
proper hub, though. I wish they had done something similar to to Lego Harry Potter as they did with
Yeah.
Indiana Jones as far as a hub, because it was a museum, but it was simple enough to like once you kind of figured it out, you could get places really easily. It wasn't hard, but with how big and expansive the Hogwarts castle was in the game, even in both games and the expanded game where they were all together, it was really fucking confusing. No matter how long you played the game, how to get places, and there was no map. So,
No Marauders map.
no, sadly, I wish they did.
Man. You know, I was reading some stuff on like YouTube comments and stuff like that, and somebody pointed out that they thought it'd be really interesting if like because like you said, Lego City Undercover and then the Lego Marvel games and stuff, like, those are their own original stories, but someone talked about them trying to do that with the Star Wars IP.
Ooh,
I wonder how that would turn out.
yucky.
Well, they kind of
Because they have their own, because there's that stupid, the Freemaker Adventures and those, so they have their own original Lego Star Wars story stuff that I've heard is probably not great, but at the same time it's also for little kids and
I mean, they
you know.
technically kind of have. I mean, that's what the DLCs for Force Awakens are. Is I mean, it's not directly based off of anything.
Yeah.
Maybe some comics, but and then Batman was an original story. What was I gonna say? There was something. There's actually Lego Star Wars 3, which is
the Clone Wars.
Wars.
Yeah.
Yes.
I never played that
You
one.
played through that one, right?
What's that one like?
It was kind of a giant ass hub.
Yeah.
It was okay. I played it on the Wii, which probably isn't the best console
That's
to play a
probably
Lego
why.
game on.
Yeah.
The controls were not that great, especially because personally I always grew up with PlayStation consoles and stuff like that, so playing it on Wii was really kind of confusing for me. The controls weren't terrible and the gameplay wasn't terrible, but it was mostly based off of the Clone Wars movie and I think the first two seasons of the Clone Wars TV show.
So did it actually follow those storylines? Because that's what I was confused with. Is
Because it looked like it was its own original thing, but then they also, I remember from the trailer, like they had the Geonosius battle scene.
They included the like the last two levels of the second movie/game.
But didn't they like completely, because I heard like, it was a big thing is that they had those big battle scenes or something like that.
Yeah, those battle scenes were the worst. Oh my god, it took me like 2 days to figure out how to fucking kill the giant brown monster in the Clone Wars movie. God, I hated it. Anyways.
giant brown monster.
There is a brown monster, but I was...
I don't remember what it was called. But I mean,
Are you talking about the Zelo Beast or whatever?
Yeah.
Oh, from the show. Okay.
Yeah.
From the movie, sir.
No, Zillow Beast isn't in the movie.
Yeah, the Zelo Beast is from the Clone Wars TV show, season 2.
Yeah. The movie's all about Jabba's son's kidnapped.
I'm just really confused. Anyways. But yeah, I mean, it was okay, and it kind of, like Ben was saying, it kind of went on to introduce more customization and more uniqueness of Lego characters and stuff like that, because, I mean, like, they completely redid the styling of each Lego character, like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin
Grievous
Skywalker.
looks completely different, which is
Grievous
nice.
looks kind of like a badass.
So the other thing,
honestly.
too, is, like, they... Because I remember Lego sets around this time were always hit or miss with people because they stylized the Lego figures as... Because Clone Wars is a very stylized show, so they
Yeah.
tried to do figures like that, but a lot of it didn't translate too
No,
well
it
into the
did not.
figures. So, like, all the clones and the droids looked cool, but, like, any of, like, the humans
characters and stuff.
looked so fucking wacky.
Yeah.
Like, and so, like, the game, I haven't played the game, but I'm assuming they did the same thing where they used the stylization of that for the game, and I'm like, oh gosh,
Pretty much,
it
yeah.
makes me cringe.
It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a terrible game, and I played it on a different console than what I was used to, and I don't even remember if I completed it, honestly. But I mean, I don't know. It was alright.
I was wanting to play it. Like, if I go back and play, I was wanting to go back and play the Harry Potter ones because I was like, oh yeah, I forgot they made that.
Same.
But you talking about it makes me not want to go back and play those.
It's not even okay. I do recommend that you go and play them. They're actually very good games, but personally, I found the hub to be really confusing because there was such an expansive area. But when you're playing the story mode, there's a little ghost that guides you where to go for each mission. I do recommend that you play it because I mean, I like the tropes that they do with like the maybe more adult scenes of the movies where it's kind of dark and stuff like that.
Harry and Hermione just banging it out.
I don't know about that.
Later.
That was that scene was actually kind of a lot less bad. Like I'm talking about the scene where they're trying to kill the Horcrux. I'm not talking about
Hermione and
like
Harry
some
didn't
weird.
fuck. As far as I know,
Lego Harry is just like elbow deep.
You can't see his little hands pop up. So, did the Harry Potter games have voice acting, or was this still the
It was still the
Oh, so I'd like it more. Okay.
instead of a it's more of a
Oh gosh.
Is that a British?
I guess so.
So,
It was enjoyable though. It kind of did remind me of playing the first two Lego Star Wars games with my dad.
the other thing with the Lord of the Rings too, as much as we were shooting on earlier, it's still a really fun game to
It
play.
is.
Like the way that they like design the levels were a lot of fun to play, and then the voice acting. So like the cutscenes are kind of like they're not terrible. It's just like whenever they would try to like undermine a serious moment with a sight gag, even though they're using the sounds and the voices from the movies, that was kind of
The one that I remember is I played the demo of it a long time ago,
Uh-huh.
and this is how I knew it wasn't the game for me. It was like right after Aragorn comes back, and they thought they lost him when he fell into the river.
Yeah.
And so like he comes back and does the whole pushing the doors into Helm's Deep thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, Aragorn, and like they're doing like the voice lines from the movie, and then he like pulls out a big wet fish like while he's talking, and I'm like,
yeah.
why? What? That doesn't.
Yeah.
I think that's a
Stupid.
scene that would probably have more benefit from a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you think about it though, like Lord of the Rings is so dialogue heavy, that would also kind of not help it
I
too.
agree.
I don't know.
Star Wars dialogue is on its own is kind of like
Dialogue
choppy
heavy.
at best, shitty at its worst time. So it's like, okay, I don't have to hear them talking. I know the gist of the beats, but like a Lord of the Rings scene without any dialogue would be kind of a pain in the butt.
That's true. I mean, they are
I just-
really long movies compared to the Star Wars game.
Yeah,
Star Wars
but I
movies.
mean, like the people that are playing that game, like, are the people that really like those movies, and I've probably attempted the watching all 3 extended versions in one day. You know, all 12 hours of content.
Yeah, bro.
And so it's like you know what they're saying and what the gist of everything is. Like, you know,
I guess that's fair.
if you see Gandalf grab Samwise grab Frodo and like shaking him, you know he's saying keep it secret, keep it safe.
Yeah.
And then like same with like Samwise, and it's like I ain't dropping no eaves, or he's dropping, and he said he's dropping.
Or like, I'm going alone, Sam. I know, and I'm coming with you.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, you know, like you can feel all that in the game
Yeah.
without needing the dialogue.
I think the biggest thing that probably makes that game fun to play were the battle scenes. Like the Battle of Helm's Deep was fun, but the Battle of Mordor and the Battle of Gondor were so much fun to play on that game because it was just like you're trying to figure out all these puzzle pieces, but then like you'd be like they throw into these huge battles, and like you would just be playing as Gandalf or Aragorn and shit like that. Like it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I remember me and my friend, it was like right before a huge snowstorm, so like we knew we were gonna get snowed in for a couple of days, and this was back when I was like a freshman or a sophomore when that game came out, and we just stocked up on like Hot Pockets and shit. We bought that game. Me and him went half and half on that, and we spent 2 days and beat that game, like 100% of it almost. So, because there's another cool thing where if you beat the game, then you get to play as a giant Sauron and his right hand person from the extent with the really weird ass mouth. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the Mouth of Sauron.
The Mouth of Sauron, yeah. So you get to play as those two characters, and they have a mini map of the entire Lord of the Rings like world, like Middle Earth, and you can just kind of fuck around and destroy shit. Like it's so
Yeah.
weird and so wacky, but it's so much fun.
I didn't even know
It's
that.
it's just such a Lego game kind of thing to do.
Does it mostly pull from the movies? Like, does it have anything from the books? Like, because I know the end of Return of the King is like Frodo and the other
Yeah, no,
hobbits going back
they
to Hobbiton.
definitely don't have that.
They only pulled from the movies as
Yeah.
far as I remember.
Yeah,
That would have been interesting.
It would have been interesting, but it would have confused the hell out of a lot of people who doesn't know.
Yeah, well, it's like when I was a kid, when I got my original Xbox, the game that I got with it was Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh, that's a badass game.
But like nobody knew that it wasn't tied to the movie. Like it's directly pulled from the books. And so like whenever I'm playing the game, and then like fucking Tom Bombadil comes out, and I'm like, who the hell is this?
Tom Bombadil.
What's going on with this shit? I was like, what? And then it goes into the barrel rights, and you're like, okay. Why are they not at Bree already? I don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
all they had to do was cross the river. Like, why is there Tom Bombadil?
Who the fuck? Yeah, no.
And it was, I don't know, it just made me think of that as like, it would be interesting to see the actual, like, story, especially now that I think things have changed, because I think they fucked it up with, like, they made Lego Hobbit, right? But they didn't do all of them. They just did, like, one of them or two
So
of
the
them.
problem with that is that they made that game right before 2 came out, and so they made the first one, and then like you could buy the second one.
2 was DLC, right?
2 was DLC, yeah.
And then
Which
they
is really-
didn't make a third one.
No, because like at that point Warner Bros. Like they were like, what company is something? The company that makes the Lego games.
Traveler's Tales?
Traveler's Tales, yeah, they lost it. It was the Warner Bros. Thing, like
Yeah.
they didn't have the, so they couldn't finish it. So,
Wow. Shame.
I never even touched the Lego Hobbit games because I'm like, the Lord of the Rings games are fun because the Lord of the Rings are such good movies, and so that's fun. But like the Hobbit is kind of
Which sucks because The Hobbit is my favorite book out of the
It's
Lord of
the
the Rings
easiest books
books.
to read. That's
Well,
for damn sure.
I think I like it because the story's more interesting. Every chapter is like it's like what we said. It's moving on to the next thing. It's always moving forward. But
Yeah.
I was like, how do you fuck that up? Like, how do you fuck that up as a movie? Like, it's not hard.
I don't know. I think it was a product of like they shouldn't have made it into 3 movies, and because they did that, he had to pad out his runtimes because people were expecting these giant like long ass movies and these
Yeah.
big spectacles, and he was like, well shit, like that's not what the book is.
And then he also added like everything was CG in that movie, which is
Yeah,
trash.
I think that if they had done a 2-parter, I think that would have been better.
I didn't mind them adding in the necromancer stuff because I thought that was cool.
We're talking about The Hobbit.
Uh,
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
you're fair. I'm sorry.
I was like, what?
I was just saying, we're going off on a tangent here.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I'll go.
I mean,
off
it's
on
a
it.
relevant
That's
tangent,
That's
but-
fine, man. It's just you can't talk about the Lego games in
Without
the Hobbit
talking
without
about
talking.
the
Well, because
about
that was one of the last major Lego games, wasn't it? Was the Lego Hobbit games, and then
No, it was the right now they're doing. It was Lego Marvel was the last big one. Lego Marvel 2.
Yeah.
So
oh, yeah, I forgot that just came out.
yeah,
Well-
I got that for the Switch, but I never beat it because it was so damn.
How long
confusing.
ago did that come out?
A year and a half ago.
So there was that, and then before that was Force Awakens, because they haven't done anything Lego Star Wars since, like
Yep.
for the other movies.
Mhm.
And then before that was The Hobbit,
I think so. And then they had their like own original IP stuff.
and before that was Pirates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God.
They released
So-
Pirates not too long after, like, 2010.
It was around the time On Stranger Tides came out because
Yeah.
it came out in
Succession.
tangent with that movie.
I don't remember when that came out.
I don't remember either. No, but yeah, no, you're right. But it's just, but I think it ties back into that is that the Lego Lord of the Rings game benefits from the fact that the Lord of the Rings movies are done really well and it's a nice story and like they would do like those huge set things. The Hobbit had none of that, so I'm like I can't imagine that game being great. Though I don't know anything about it, I just never bothered to play something like this.
I mean, the only reason I played a Lego game recently was because it was Star Wars, and I was like, I need to play a Star Wars game.
Yeah.
And then since then we've had Star Wars games come out, and they're okay. I don't think we're ever gonna get back to where those kinds of games are top notch anymore.
I don't know. It just EA Fallen Order was a lot of fun, and then
It was okay.
Battlefront 2. It's good now. It wasn't great when it
It was
came
definitely
out.
trash when it released.
Yeah, I play it semi regularly now. It's a lot of fun, but I think it's oddly enough that the Lego games were some of the best games of like those like specific like IPs to play at the time, which is really funny because it's like yeah, they're kids games, but like I can go back and play a Lego game now and still have just as much fun with it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think that's just kind of the charm of Lego games, because Lego games, or even Lego, just because, I mean, if you set a bucket of Legos in front of a 30-year-old man or a 40-year-old man, they're probably gonna do some shit like build a rocket ship or a fucking car. It's just fun because, I mean, it's textile, you're using your hands and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't know. Lego games are something for me that's always gonna kind of have that place in my heart.
And going back to what I said earlier, where like it's a nice replacement for buying these expensive ass sets. Like even as an adult, like you don't want to buy all these sets, but you can play a Lego game and still get that same kind of joy of like building something and then like having all these fun characters and just like it was a bit. It's I say that they're not so much of a sandbox game because it is kind of controlled and it also is like the whole world is not Lego, which is another thing I always thought was a little odd that it took me some getting used to is like what was Lego and what was like texture like different. Like it was just interesting the way they did that, but like it's still like there's a lot of building, there's a lot of creativity to it, figuring out those puzzles. So there's just a little bit more of a like you still have to kind of use your imagination and stuff like that to kind of figure out that kind of stuff. I mean, it is easier now, but like especially for the kids and stuff like that, like it was like so much fun to do.
It'll be interesting to see how the Skywalker saga, like so far it's only been rumored that it's going to be open world to an extent. Like it's going to be the way they described it was it's going to be like Knights of the Old Republic, where your hub is basically a ship, and then from the ship you can fly to other planets and then roam the planets and like do the missions on the planets. Like I think it's going to be more open world like that.
So is it not going to be a linear storytelling experience? Like it's not going to go through like each like.
I think it will be. I think it will like. I think there'll be a story mode, and then once you get through that, I think it's going to be more like Force Awakens, because that's the Force Awakens game. Like you go to individual planets, and then once you finish the story mission there, then it opens up the free play, or if there's other missions, like sometimes there's multiple missions on one planet because there's multiple things that happened on that planet. So I think it's going to be like that, where you go to a planet and it's going to have a hub world. Like the planet's going to be where you can run around and then you go and do your missions, and then it's going to span all 9 films. So that's going to be quite a bit of content there. I'm assuming they're probably going to be doing the same set pieces for the ones that they've done before. We'll see what they do with the new ones.
They're just gonna. I think what they're gonna do, just based on that trailer alone, is that for one they're going off like the latest looking minifigures, but they're also probably going to do a little bit more cinematic angles and stuff like that, especially for those cutscenes, and it's just going to look a lot bigger and fuller. And I think that's probably what you're gonna see with like the styling of that game. But then the other thing too is like they like updated all the they're doing more realistic like Lego models for like all the ships and stuff like that too. They're trying. I think they're trying to blur. Like bring close together the toys and the games and stuff like that to try to make it feel like a little bit more cohesive, which I kind of like a lot.
I wonder if they're going to cover any of the Clone Wars stuff, because Clone Wars and then technically Rebels doesn't have anything to do with Skywalker, so it shouldn't have anything Rebels in there, but it might. You never know. Yeah. Clone Wars, if we're talking about Skywalker as a person, that's probably
the best interpretation of Anakin Skywalker, and it really does a lot of the heavy lifting for the prequel series.
Agreed.
And depending on how well it's received, like I could see them, instead of creating new Star Wars games, just adding on to it with DLC. And
then the easiest DLCs you can do are Rogue One solo DLCs. Boom, you just got 2 things right there. Like you don't have to do it.
And you just keep adding to it and make it more of the new model, which is a service, game as a service. You just keep adding in more content through the DLC. I think that's a much smarter way than.
So funny you say that. So the Lego Marvel game, like they would do that anytime a new Marvel movie would come out. You would always get a DLC for that, and you would get like 3 or 4 levels that are movie based, and then you get all the movie skins and stuff like that. Like,
yeah. So it sounds like sounds. I feel like it's really interesting as a game going through the history of the Lego games, because you can definitely see, no pun intended, them building off of each other.
Yeah.
Into where it is now, where originally it was just here's a playpen and a story. It's like what you would do with your little action figures, and now it's like it really is more do whatever you want. Especially when they start having the character creators. The first the complete saga had 2 customized character slots
Just, you could put fucking Darth Maul's head on Princess Leia's body. Like, whoa,
Well, I did. So I did Darth Maul's head, but then I used Shak T's head top thing because I was trying to recreate from the comic books, from the Legacy comics, Darth Warlock. I was trying to create him, and then the other one was a Tusken Raider with Jedi robes, hood, and a green lightsaber because I was trying to recreate Asherad Het from the Legacy comics as well.
Nice.
So I was like, when I couldn't do that in Force Awakens, I was like, fuck this game. And also Force Awakens has like 8 or more slots. Like you can just make a ton of like custom characters.
Jeez.
So it'll be really cool to see like with this game spanning so many generations, all of the customizable pieces that you can create. I mean, the Batman one was really interesting with the custom creation from that, because after you finished certain campaigns, you would unlock additional pieces, and so you could create characters in the custom that weren't like actually in the game for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So you could make Azrael. Like it had Azrael, but you could only have him if you custom created him in the custom mode. So that was really interesting, that it was like, he's not a character, like you can't find him or purchase him.
It's really
but
weird.
Once you beat the game, you'll get all of his pieces, his hands, his belt, and everything, and you can just create Azrael. You just have to give him a Batarang so he's got the powers of Batman.
Yeah.
And I thought that, like, I wonder if they'll do something like that with more of the comic book characters.
That'd be interesting. It's weird, but Disney's kind of 50-50 though, because they really don't like touching legend stuff though.
That's true.
Well,
like,
I was thinking about the new comics because recently with the release of Rise of Skywalker, there's the whole bin comics that are going on. So
have you read any of this?
No, I mean, I've read what's been posted a little bit. I know the basic storyline. I think, is that also the one where it has like the origins of the Knights of Ren, or is that a separate comic?
So there's the Knights of Ren, and I think it intertwined. I think they're both. I think there's a one-off with the Knights of Ren that it kind of talked about, because I guess like Ren was an actual character, which is something they never alluded to in the movies.
That's like the Dread Pirate Roberts, where it just passes from one person to another. But.
So like they never really touched about that, but like that's like he met that Ren, and that's what got him a ton of that. And I think that comic book also talks about where Luke's where the lightsaber went, where his lightsaber went after Bespin and all those other things too.
Yeah,
like
I remember seeing something about that. So
like it'd be interesting to see them pull it, because then you have characters. They also have their own original characters. There's Dr. Alpha, which is a really popular comic character that's from these new comics. That'd be interesting to throw her into there, because then there's her characters, but then she has a protocol droid and an astromech droid that both are psychopaths, murderer AIs in them. And so they're like up to no good, and they're constantly killing people. Like they ended up like overtaking her, and they ended up like capturing her and doing all this shit to her at some point in the like it's really fucking wacky, but it'd be really fun to see them kind of do some stuff with them. I don't know if they'd actually do that. But.
They have a lot. I mean, I feel like what's really gonna get Disney and Lego, anything tied to Star Wars at this point in time, more money, is if they jump both feet into more extended lore. Because as a classic Star Wars nerd, like nothing got me off more than all the expanded bullshit. Like,
yeah.
And that I feel like they kind of started doing that with Rise of Skywalker, and that's why I'm really interested to see what kind of extra shit they're gonna put in the Lego game. Because, I mean, if the original trilogy and the Clone Wars and all that has a bunch of extra shit in it, there's got to be some insane additions that they're going to add in there, because it's like, why would you make another iteration of the Star Wars game if you're not going to go balls to the wall with a bunch of crazy characters?
Especially because this one is like the biggest thing. It's like all 9 films. You've got to incorporate cool shit from all of them to be able to really appeal to a wide audience like that, and to draw people in. Because at this point I'm like, if you're literally just going to make me replay the same levels for like a 4th time, 3rd time, like,
I'll still enjoy it, but I won't be happy.
Yeah, I'll give you my fucking money, but I'll just be...
And I don't want all the unnecessary characters too. Like, I don't care about having a brown Imperial officer, a black Imperial officer, like, you know, the uniforms. I don't want, like, I mean, the different stormtroopers is kind of cool just because there's so many different kinds of stormtroopers, but it's like they're all going to do the same shit.
Stormtroopers are different, but yeah, but I'm like, I don't need a first or like order officer, all these other things, and like it's just, yeah, that was the problem with the older games, that there wasn't a whole lot they could do, so like they would just kind of just do variant colors.
Yeah.
I'm honestly really interested to see if they do some sort of DLC for Rise of Skywalker, not Rise of Skywalker, Skywalker Saga. Because like you said about The Force Awakens, they included different missions from expanded.
You
not
mean
even
like
expanded
like
universe
like
stuff.
original content? Like
No, not even original content. I mean, like, would they possibly include along down the line, even though it has no connection to the current IP and the Rise of Skywalker or any Skywalker IP? Would they include like the Mandalorian or adapt it for some sort of mini mission?
But then, because then you're gonna have the Kenobi series coming out, and they're doing that
Exactly.
Cassian Andor thing.
So to just become this giant kind of hub game. I don't know. I'm really curious to see what they do with that because with like Disney Plus coming out with these original Star Wars IPs and stuff like that, how are they going to incorporate that stuff to games if they do? I don't know.
That's true. Are they just going to come out with a whole new platform? I would hope not. That's why I kind of don't understand why they're calling it the Skywalker Saga. I would just call it Lego Star Wars, like
The
just
complete edition.
no,
or
just
something like
just
that.
straight up
Lego
Lego
Star
Star
Wars.
Wars. Because I mean, that's been the big reboot
Well,
trend lately.
so
It's
that's
just-
the weird thing that I thought too. So the Clone Wars game was called Lego Star Wars 3, but then it was the Clone Wars. So I'm like,
It's not even a third installment.
like that makes no sense as the way you call Lego Star Wars 3 because technically, if you're really looking at it, it's the fourth Lego Star Wars game. So I'm like,
Yep.
because they called the third game the complete saga. So I'm just like, I don't see the point of that.
Well, and then the second one was Lego Star Wars 2, the original trilogy. So that's already awkward. 'cause-
I'm just
Yeah.
like-
I don't know.
Yeah, at least Skywalker Saga is easy to like get around. So like they're not throwing a fucking 4 up there, you know. So like at least like it's all 9 films, which is what they've been calling this saga anyways. The whole thing is the Skywalker.
I
saga.
bet more people are going to call it Rise of Skywalker on accident than they call it Skywalker Saga.
Hey, don't at me, okay? But like, I really am curious to see if they're gonna turn the Mandalorian IP into some sort of video game, even whether it's Lego or not. Because personally, I would love to see more content like the Mandalorian, even if it doesn't include the Mandalorian IP. Because I find the Mandalorian story just super interesting, like even the whole background of it.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if they're ever gonna include that in anything.
Maybe. I mean,
It doesn't include like the big set pieces like in George Lucas's films or anything like that, but
The thing about the Mandalorian is that it very much the Skywalker saga is like it's galaxy defining stakes at all times.
Yeah.
And so the problem, especially with people giving the Rise of Skywalker so much shit, is that like they really had to kind of up the ante from a planet killer. Like it's just like it's just there's always just going to be a bigger planet destroyer. Like that's all those sagas are, and the Star Wars has always gotten shit for that. The thing about the Mandalorian that makes it as good as it is that there's no huge stakes. It's like the only thing that's important is to these characters. Like outside of these characters, what's going on doesn't really fucking matter. But because of that, you're able to tell so much more complex and interesting stories about these interesting people who don't have a huge way on the effect of the galaxy like the Skywalker family did, but it's like you still care. Like there's so much story to tell with all these planets and stuff like that. And that's why the Mandalorian works as well as it does. So I think if they keep making different, maybe not just with the Mandalorian, but like the Cassian Andor thing, or if they found like another original character to make, like they could easily do that. Like it wouldn't be that hard.
and if they do, I wouldn't necessarily want it as a Lego game.
true.
I mean, I like the Lego games, and I think it's a decent way to introduce kids to something that you really like a nostalgia factor. Like, you know, if I had a 5-year-old, that's how I would introduce my kid to Star Wars first, probably, and then be like, okay, now let's watch the movie, or like kind of, you know, like do it at the same time. It's a good introduction tool, but Mandalorian to me isn't. It's Star Wars, but it's not like as childish as Star Wars usually is.
Yeah.
So I don't think I don't think the levels wouldn't be fun, but you know, it would just be.
It'd be more
I
interesting
think
as a different format.
I think
Yeah.
like running into what the Pirates games did too, because the Pirates were like a lot of it wasn't like super kid friendly. If you think about those movies a lot, like
Yeah.
a kid can watch it and enjoy the huge like spectacle of it all, but like the nuanced story and like the complexity of like the backstabbing and all that kind of stuff that goes on, like it didn't translate well into that game.
No, it did not.
So I kind of see where you're
I
going
think
with
that could have been a problem with that game too, because I mean, like they had to avoid all of like the almost kind of they had to avoid like the sexual nature and adult nature of the movies. Like there's a scene in the third movie where like had to was like, all right, like fucking give me your weapons. And I have to search you. And Elizabeth was like taking all these weapons out of her stuff, and he was like, I said I have to search you. And then in the next scene, you see her without pants.
Well, and then there's that whole thing of like with her in that dress, like that
Yeah,
dress was like
exactly.
constantly coming back, and which by the way, the fucking Lego game is literally just the dress brick.
It's so funny.
It looks so fucking stupid because it's basically just a
God.
minifigure without hands or a head.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
God.
It's interesting to see what they're gonna do with the Skywalker Saga Lego game.
So one other thing that I wanted to bring up was the split screen thing.
Yeah.
So in the original games, like especially the first 3 Lego Star Wars games, there was no like split screen. You guys all shared that screen, like you all couldn't walk farther apart from each other. But when they started like getting with these new games, what they would do is they would do that really weird like split system, but like camera angles would constantly move and like shift, and it wasn't until like you guys got super far apart that it would split the screen in half, and it was so fucking annoying to deal with that it was so much worse than just having to share that screen.
Yeah.
So which one do y'all like more?
The first way, like, at least with the first one, it'd be like, all right, man, let's move on. I'd be like, I'm breaking this thing. It's like, no, dude, everything's already broken. Let's go. And it's like, all right, and then you move. Like,
Yeah, I remember. See, I just remember it. Like, I think it's a better system, but I would get in so much more fights. Like, I'm like sometimes like, okay, like Beth, I just want to play through this level. Like, I don't want to freaking like we can come back and do this with free play. It's much more fun with other characters, anyways. She'd be like, no. But the thing that you could do is that if you could push the character far enough and get through the door, then it would transition to the next scene. And so we'd be constantly going back and forth. And I remember like I was like in like 4th or 5th grade. I remember my mom like busting it because we were like screaming at each other because we just constantly go, and she like took our controllers away because we couldn't decide on what to do. So it was always really fun. But like I do like that system a lot better because I'm just like, at least it like doesn't fuck up the screen, because like it would like cut like the screen diagonally, and then like it would constantly move, and so the position would always shift and perspective was always weird. And
I remember
such a
that
weird design.
the second Lego Indiana Jones game, I didn't play it that much, but I definitely remember the whole split screen horizontal thing being so super fucky. And I know that there were like planes or something in that game, and if you're flying or something, it would just like rotate the screen and be really annoying and confusing.
Yeah.
So you're having to track your character around the screen in this box that's constantly moving, so you're like, what the fuck is going on? Personally, I prefer the old way, but I would also appreciate that, like, if the characters are going in 2 different directions, like on opposite sides of the screen, just split it down the middle. That would be fine, like a traditional split screen game.
Or like have like the option to do that.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
the problem with the Pirates game, just because we just played that, was that like you would just be a little bit farther apart, but it'd be enough to where it would initiate the split screen, and so like you would like be essentially looking at the same like sides of the map, but you'd have this giant ass line that was like going through it, so you couldn't see what was like down below or above you. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
why? Like, what's the like purpose does this serve? Like, it just, I don't know.
We'll have to see when it releases, I guess. I'm really excited to play it, honestly. Like, even if my dad doesn't want to play with me or whatever, I'm still gonna fucking play it. Like, hell yeah.
I'll probably rent it.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'll definitely buy it, like, just to have it to play through, because I'm like, it is all 9 films, so I'm like, that is a lot of content there.
That's a decent week, at least.
And with my nephews and stuff like that too, it'll be nice to like give it to them and like, hey, look, this is what's like you said, like introducing people, like younger kids, to Star Wars. Like the Lego games are a great way to do that. So I definitely think it'll be something that I'll use for that, and just hold on to it for a couple of years and stuff like that. Hopefully it turns out as well as the older games did, but I don't know. Only time will tell with that.
I didn't experience the cover system that you're talking about with the Force Awakens game. Was it decent, or was it kind of confusing and just not really?
It's more sections. There's like sections where you're behind cover and you like pop up behind cover and shoot stormtroopers as Finn or something. So it's not like all the time. It's not like there's
like a turret section almost in some action games.
Sometimes it does have you like, after you kill something, you like get it, like jump it and move to the next part, and that's how like that segment is like on Indoor, there was one where you're like going from log to log in cover and like shooting stuff, and then whenever it's free, then you like push forward and you like move forward, and then
Wait, there was an Indoor level?
it starts with Indoor.
Oh, okay.
What?
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Interesting.
The prologue is Indoor.
Huh? So it
Okay.
starts with like the
Fall of Empire.
Okay.
And then
That's interesting.
yeah, and so it basically just rehashes the Indoor level, and I don't think that there's a Death Star thing, but there might have been. I don't remember because it was like the first thing. So, but it was one of those where I wanted to introduce you to the characters that's going to be reintroducing you to whenever it gets to like Han and Leia.
Yeah.
Does
So-
that make sense?
Yeah, it was, and it's it's such a graphical update since the last time that they had Star Wars stuff that it was like,
They just wanted
look
to
how
show
much
off.
fancier it is. It's on PS4.
Don't these guys look not as shitty now?
Yeah, it's
Love
like,
it.
Look at how actually plastic they look. They look like they have rough edges.
So did they do the Luke scene at the end of the movie?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did they do a gag with that?
I'm pretty sure. I think it was like a thing where she like pulls out a thing of flowers and is like, oh no, and then pulls out the lightsaber.
Gosh, that's so stupid. But that's so Lego.
Yep, that's what they do.
Yeah.
Well, did we successfully navigate nostalgia of the Lego series?
I feel like
Yeah.
at least for the Star Wars IP and some
Yeah.
expanded stories of Lego.
I think it was just nice to go back through because, like I said, in preparation for this, I watched a lot more gameplay, and I'm like, oh gosh, this game looks way worse than I thought than I remember. But I'm like, I watched it like, oh, I remember doing that level. Oh, and then I was like there was some comments and stuff like that. I was like, oh, this level used to be such a pain in the ass for me as a kid. Like I remember I remember like there are levels that just come back to me, and there's these certain parts that I like will constantly remember because like it's just how it is. And so like I haven't seen this in like 10+ years, and I'm like I instantly remember being a little kid in my room. Like I remember we had like it was my brother's Xbox technically, so we had to like sneak into his room like whenever he wasn't playing it. And so I just remember the other thing too is we had this big ass like TV stand for whatever, but the TV was basically like up above us, so we'd have to look up to play it. And so it just instantly brought me back to that. I'm like, yeah, like it was so much fun. But
Well, here's looking forward to the new one. I guess
Yeah.
that'll
Yeah.
be the end of our first episode of the Untitled podcast that we are currently doing.
hopefully titled at some point soon.
Yeah.
We'll come up with that eventually.
Hell yeah, brothers.
I have been Jordan.
This has been
I'm Tyler.
Catch us next time.
Bye.